You are watching Exertas.
And I just want to say that RFK, I mean, it's a non-starter with the Democrats because everything he stands for is completely contra everything the Democrats stand for, which is they're the party of the pharmaceutical industry. And
right. He's a traditional Democrat, and they can't handle that. They don't look anything like what they used to, especially when it comes to big pharma, especially when it comes to war, the existential issues. So if Kennedy can align himself with an existential issue that Trump can acknowledge, like that he's like, yes, this is a major issue. He's like, we can have all these disagreements, but we have to have some meeting place if we want to continue to exist.
And that's
this refusal to have to just completely divide yourself from half the country is a terrible political move. So like even at the time when,
unless it's I don't know, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying when Hillary said deplorable, I was like, what a terrible political move. Why would you just debase half your country?
So we don't think in the same way as the rest of the world, right? So in America's really strange. Like if you go to Germany or you go to Russia, they're thinking more generationally, actually. Like Germans think in like 8-year, 10-year terms. Russians think in like 20. China thinks in 20, 25-year cycles, really, like generational cycles, right? We're like thinking 4-year terms, which is 2 years to 4-year terms. That's the way Americans think. And every 4 years we have new.
We live in the moment. What this is to our benefit. No,
we get children of corn.
Be here
voters. Now. Yeah, but it's the naivete of the new voter that makes America possible, and we're not thinking about the long-term effects of any plan. Like, well, in 25 years we're going to have to pay for that. Yeah, you're going to have to pay for that. That's literally every single thing we've ever seen happen. So. Right. I wonder about provocation. So you call them deplorables. Okay, who are the left in America? Most of the time, they're disenfranchised children, even if they've grown up, of conservatives. I don't know if that's completely clear, but it seems like a big I hate you dad thing from the left a lot in America. It's like, well, you know, my parents were racist, or my parents were ignorant and arrogant and wrong, and I'm doing my best to admit. It's very like after the war, you know, because we were bad. I admit that we were so bad. It's just that's the ideology of the Democrat. So to then say, hey, every policy that they're doing right now objectively is to take away freedom, to meddle with democratic processes so that the votes don't even count realistically. I mean, how do you know who's voting for what if the entire system is fake? Who should care the most? People that are Republic valued or people who are obsessed with democratic processes? I don't know. It seems like
I feel the elections, they're really just temperature checks to figure out how big the backlash will be when they decide to pick whoever they were going to pick all along to begin with. So if it comes in and it's like 2080, then they can be like, whoa, it was like 58, 40 or so, guys. They can kind of like play with that sliding scale. But if it's so obscene, then I think that maybe they have to let certain things slide. I don't know.
Can I go further? Can I go further? That they don't really care what you call their new dictator, so long as Hugo Boss makes the outfit. I feel like that's the thing. They're just trying to see how far they have to go to swing you back and forth until they get to the Christian right or the neo woke or whatever it is.
I want to just submit that instead of doing the neocon and the liberals or like the right verse, can we just go back to the Masonic versus the anti-Masonic parties? Like, let's just try that division and just see if it's any better than what we've got now.
I don't think you're wrong, actually. And I think so. It's interesting when people think about, and we're talking about a pluribus unum earlier. I think that America is a Masonic experiment and a failed one, right? Because the idea was to liberate. Well, I wish it had gone better.
Not yet, man. We got the unfinished pyramid. It's still going
to crossing fingers for that singularity, that Masonic singularity. But
trust the plan.
It's ongoing. We got till 2037.
Masons were the original QAnon. Is that what we're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Where we go, when we go all.
We talked about this idea that philosophers need to build a religion, right? So if you create a way out of worshiping Calvinist predestined fate-based, reality into a self-manifestation direction, that is kind of the Masonic experiment. But I don't think as many people want freedom as you think. That's the problem. And they've
want real freedom and the responsibility of that real freedom. They want a conceptual freedom, but that actual freedom is too much. Yeah.
Right. I think they like tradition more than they like freedom.
Otherwise, we wouldn't
Whatever.
have this whole leader, propaganda
Right.
thing.
Totally, because
You
it's
know,
all about becoming more self-responsible.
that's what
and
Jack Parsons argued. That the demigods are would not exist without us wanting to not embrace our own, what comes with freedom. Yeah.
I think it's. I think that is it. We're becoming so, but maybe that's the benefit is that over time, it's like Fabian steps or something, that we would get to a point where people would react against religious control, puritanical witch burnings, and want to be enlightened, free beings, right, with free agency and everything else. But I don't know. Doesn't it feel like the opposite? It seems like we're moving further and further towards despotic fear, safety, like TSA security in 9/11.
Yeah, but the binary is to blame largely. So like this is something that's should be so obvious. But look at what's happening with the binary thing. Our treatment of it in terms of gender is such that there's this whole emphasis on the spectrum, right? This didn't even used to exist necessarily like in gay pride stuff until relatively recently, almost with the pandemic, right? But there's this whole thing that it's like there's an emphasis on that gender is a spectrum, but when it comes to politics, zero spectrum. If you don't meet every check, check mark, like you feel, you have the bullet points, and it's like if you don't fall in that, you're one or the other, and both sides will sometimes do that to you. So it's just it's that classic meme of the guy who's like, I think both sides have some points to me, and then the left pushes him to the right.
You see, that's
the right. And then they're like, "Oh, are you okay?" And they're like, "Hey, why are you siding with the enemy?" That's the dynamic that's taking place. But isn't it weird? Because politics is an absolute spectrum. It's always been a spectrum. There is no like you're completely this or completely that traditionally. But now we're at a place where the same people, in many cases, that are emphasizing that gender is a spectrum, allow for no spectrum in politics. That you are this or you are that.
No, I think, and also, didn't you bring this up the other day? How crazy is it that in generations gone past, Democrats could always, it was invariable that Democrats would deny the election results. Like George Bush stole the election
over and over again. Yeah.
For decades, right? For generations. So
totally.
it's just, and then to invert
usually
it,
they're right. Because everybody steals elections. Every election probably been stolen.
But you're not allowed to talk
Mike
about
Kennedy
that
probably stole the election
anymore, right? Well, yeah, of course.
People,
well,
you mean?
JFK? Say,
yeah,
JFK.
Yeah.
Contra Costa.
My grandfather used to say that all the time of how many dead people voted for JFK. Yeah. And the mob thought he'd be working for him, and then he wasn't, and then they didn't know what to do.
Very Trump-like.
The media backing.
It's a very Trump-like situation there, because if somebody gets in on some kind of funny business, doesn't really know, and then all of a sudden they're in there, and then you can't control them.
The Kennedy family is interesting to me because they represent so many of the things that I dislike about politics, but they have this inherent underdog quality to them that almost makes them more sympathetic. But I mean, it's a political legacy funded on basically corrupt money that was sort of anti-American in spirit, I guess, or
Really?
real.
It's a big family, and the context is a lot. Like all of these people in the Kennedy family grew up debating each other regularly, like with just the treatment of debate. That's my frustration with Kamala Harris.
I'm really surprised.
Fear of like having to be put on the spot to answer something on your own, to show that you have critical thinking, that you've given this enough thought to do, and she just wants to play this part all that, like it just wants to, they need this thing to be so staged, and it comes across as really inauthentic, and most Americans seem to be able to recognize that, that this lack of authenticity, and that's why so many people, like I was saying, like gravitate to people like Rogan when it comes to where they're going to go for their media. They want a real discussion. They crave it, and we crave it in our personal lives, and people feel really isolated. They want to connect. Even people who come up to me angry at the farmers market, I can see deep down they really want to like have a real genuine communication, and they're frustrated with themselves for being so conditioned to not even knowing how to do that. Maybe not anymore, maybe they never have, I don't know, but I can see that there's definitely like a desire from most people to like really have a genuine communication, to be okay with having certain disagreements. But we made it in this tug of war. abortion, at no point is this going to be reconcilable without compromise. At no point. And what we had previously was a relatively reasonable compromise. And you're like, okay, well, no super late term abortions, and they're like, okay, well, it's like, but they had to keep pushing that, and
I 100% agree with you when you're talking about on an individual level, and like people want to have these deep conversations, but I also feel like it's trying to compare quantum physics to astrophysics. Like, yeah, in the microcosm, these set of rules apply, but in the macrocosm, at a national level, even at like an entire state level, like there's entirely different rules and algorithms that you have to use to calculate trajectories and stuff. And for sure, RFK probably would like dominate in the quantum physics level, right? But it seems that he doesn't have the right formula to operate in at the astrophysics level.
People know that they're being lied to all the time, left and right. They all know that, and so like that's a indicator of authenticity from it. So why did Alex Jones become so substantiated following Bohemian Grove? They're like, he got in there, he took the footage. It was so like, oh, he's exposing something. People really want that on both sides. I think they